I killed the engine so hard the truck lurched forward and died, coffee exploding across the dash like arterial spray. 6 months in Seattle, one duffel in the passenger seat, and my 10 acres outside Bend, Oregon, had been hijacked by strangers. 3-seater cathedrals mocked me where my tomatoes once bled red against the fence line. A gold-lettered sign screamed Willow Creek Homeowners Association in arrogant cursive. A yellow violation notice flayed my front door in the wind. $9,000 for 90 days of non-compliance, with an HOA that didn't exist when I locked the gate in March. I'm Robert Harlan, 55, software engineer, lifelong bachelor, and 30 seconds ago the sole owner of Quiet Dirt. Now a Patagonia-clad stranger was power washing a Subaru beside my garden shed, while twin girls in matching braids shrieked on a swing set that cost more than my first mortgage. The air smelled of fresh stain and betrayal. The notice listed capital crimes: mailbox non-compliant, citing wrong shade of sage, lawn and eyesore. $100 a day for failing to obey ghosts. My pulse jackhammered like a server in meltdown, ears ringing louder than the cicadas. Susan Whitaker strode up the gravel like she owned it, clipboard a riot shield, smile a scalpel. 42, razor bob, eyes that could audit your soul and garnish your wages. Robert Harlan, she said, as if we'd shared bake sales together for a decade. Welcome home. Mark said you'd be ecstatic. Mark Brennan, my partner of 6 years, the man who held my spare key while I debugged code in Seattle, had sold my land to strangers. Susan unleashed a torrent. County permits, environmental reports, architectural covenants, all stamped, sealed, and bearing my forged signature on a Tuesday when I was screen sharing with Microsoft at 9 a.m. Sharp. The loops on my capital were pornographically perfect, the pressure too even. I could bury him with one email timestamp. She paraded me past the cabins like a returning prophet. Cabin 1 belonged to Eleanor Grayson, 72, retired principal from Eugene. She'd cashed out her bungalow to buy guaranteed serenity and a porch swing that faced west. Cabin 2 housed Tom and Lisa Carter, 34, who had gutted their savings so their twins, Ava and Zoe, could have a playground instead of a parking lot. Cabin 3 was Susan's own model unit, 15 grand sunk into permits and legal work. Total haul, $125,000 in climbing, every cent funneled through accounts Mark controlled. Where is he? My voice cracked like thin ice over a creek in January. Susan's smile shattered. Family emergency. 3 weeks dead air. I assumed he was finalizing with you. The detonation in my skull was nuclear. Mark had waited for my flight, forged my name, collected the money, and ghosted 2 weeks before touchdown. The cabins weren't shacks. They were engineered with copper gutters, stone fireplaces, and smart thermostats that screamed 7-figure budgets. He'd used my reputation as collateral and my absence as the perfect alibi. That night I sat on the porch with a headlamp and a bottle of Maker's Mark, wind clawing the ponderosa pines. The notary was real. The license had expired 18 months earlier. Mark had paid someone to rubber stamp fraud. I traced the money. 50 grand drained from our LLC the same day Susan cut her check. His Seattle apartment vacated, lease broken, forwarding address a lie. His phone a robotic, number no longer in service. His LinkedIn scrubbed clean, his Instagram set to private, his email bouncing like a bad check. At 9:03 p.m., the doorbell sliced the dark. Deputy Greg Morrison filled the frame, badge catching the porch light like a warning shot. Susan hovered behind him, knuckles bone white on that clipboard. Possible fraud on your title, Greg said. Mind if we come in? He laid out the pattern. 3 identical scams in 2 counties. Absent owner, trusted partner, real permits, fake signatures. Mark wasn't a thief. He was a serial predator. My stomach lurched like I'd swallowed a live wire. Greg's radio crackled with updates from Jefferson County. Another victim, another set of cabins, another forged deed. The net was tightening. We crowded into my living room, Eleanor clutching her lease like a life raft, Tom's jaw ticking, Lisa's eyes red but dry. No one spoke for a full minute. Then Eleanor broke the silence. That deposit was every dime I had after 50 years of teaching. I sold my mother's china to make it. Tom's voice cracked. We sold our camper, our emergency fund, the girls' college starter. We trusted him because he showed us architectural renderings with Ava and Zoe's names on the swing tags. I waited for the mob to turn on me. Instead, Susan flipped her clipboard. The permits are real. The builds are code perfect. We can burn it all down in court, or we can finish it our way. The room inhaled like a single organism. Midnight. Coffee cold. Eleanor demanded line-item budgets, her reading glasses perched like a general's binoculars. Tom sketched playground specs on a napkin, his engineer's hand steady despite the tremor in his voice. I pulled server logs proving Mark was nowhere near a notary that Tuesday, then cross-referenced flight manifests and hotel keycard swipes. By dawn we had a war plan. Sue, recover, and if the money came back, build the community Mark promised but never intended to deliver. 72 hours later Greg's radio crackled while we were measuring cabin foundations with a tape that snapped in the wind. Suspect in custody. Jefferson County. Tried the same play on a ranch outside Madras. Owner came home early, with a loaded 12-gauge across his arm. Mark had been running parallel cons, using Willow Creek photos as bait. The rancher's security cam caught him sprinting through sagebrush in Italian loafers, briefcase flapping like a broken wing, dust cloud billowing behind him like a bad omen. I drove to the jail under a sky the color of a fresh bruise. The guard led me to a booth where Mark looked smaller and orange, eyes darting like a cornered coyote. "I timed your contract," he said through the plexiglass, voice thin. 6 months was the window. I figured once the cash rolled in, you'd see the vision. He still talked like we were splitting a pizza at Deschutes Brewery. Land values would triple, Rob. Everyone wins. I didn't blink. The plea deal sat on the table. 18 months, full restitution from $180,000 in frozen accounts, or 5 years if he rolled the dice. His public defender whispered the odds. Mark signed with a pen that shook so hard the ink bled. Court day. The gallery was packed. Victims, reporters, neighbors clutching coffee like rosaries. The air smelled of tension and burnt Folgers. Eleanor spoke first, voice steady as a ruler across knuckles. "He stole my retirement, but he gave me a family I never knew I needed. I choose the family." Tom's turn. "My girls will grow up on a playground we voted to fund ourselves, not one built on lies." I leaned into the mic, knuckles white. Mark didn't just forge my name. He weaponized 6 years of trust to rob people who believed in me because they believed in partnership. Susan closed, clipboard finally at rest. He corrupted systems meant to protect us. We fixed them, line by line, vote by vote. The gavel fell like a guillotine. Restitution ordered. Title cleared. We refiled the HOA paperwork the hard way, real signatures, mailed notices, open vote under fluorescent library lights that buzzed like angry hornets. Eleanor grilled every line item until the budget bled red ink. Tom negotiated swing set safety ratings down to the bolt torque. Susan became our elected manager at a salary we posted on the community fridge next to the kids' finger paintings. My 10 acres morphed into 7 cabins, a community room with a coffee station that actually worked, and a garden Eleanor ruled with military precision and rhubarb pie that could stop a feud in its tracks. We installed a commercial-grade playground with rubber mulch deep enough to break a fall from the moon. The twins tested every slide before we poured the final concrete. 1 year later, the county assessor knocked on my door with a new valuation, $2 million. My annual take from fair market rents and shared amenities hit $48 grand, deposited every quarter like clockwork. Susan's consulting gigs tripled. She drove a new Subaru but still parked it in the same gravel spot. The waiting list for new cabins stretched to 14 vetted families. Each application read aloud at potlucks where kids judged the pie contest and adults judged character. We added 4 more units, each approved by committee vote after a 3-hour meeting that ended with Eleanor's rhubarb and 0 raised voices. The new cabins faced south for passive solar, had rain barrels chained to downspouts, and came with a covenant stronger than steel. No single person ever holds the keys to the kingdom again. 2 years post-sentencing, Mark walked out of county lockup with a cardboard box and caught a greyhound east under a pseudonym. Willow Creek kept growing. University researchers turned us into a case study on resilient community design, complete with glossy brochures and a TEDx talk Susan delivered in boots still dusty from site walks. The sign by the road is still plain cedar, no gold. Pride shows and porch lights that work, a borrowed rake returned before sunset, and a community bulletin board where lost dogs find homes faster than Amazon delivers. I never thought the strangers on my driveway would become the neighbors who know I take my coffee black, fix my Wi-Fi when the router hiccups, and show up with a casserole when the flu hits. Eleanor still bakes rhubarb every June and threatens to withhold slices from anyone who misses a meeting. The Carter twins start kindergarten next fall on a playground we funded with cabin rents and 0 debt, their names etched on the dedication plaque beside Eleanor's in simple block letters. Mark's fatal error wasn't the forgery. It was betting a retired principal with a steel spine, 2 exhausted parents who would sell their blood before letting their kids down, 1 relentless manager who could read a balance sheet like tea leaves, and a stubborn engineer who once stayed up 72 hours straight to debug a legacy system, would fold. We didn't. We built. We built a place where the mail carrier knows every dog by name, where the fire pit crackles every Friday regardless of weather, where the community room hosts everything from toddler music class to estate planning seminars. We built a place where the budget is public, the votes are binding, and the pie is always warm. Now it's your turn. Ever stared down a betrayal that should have buried you 6 feet under and built something stronger instead? Drop your story below. I read every damn one. And take a stand. When the system fails, when trust is weaponized, when the ground vanishes beneath your boots, do you burn it down in righteous fury or rebuild it bulletproof with better locks and wider doors? Speak loud. The algorithm loves engagement, but I love hearing from people who've bled for it, cried in the dirt, and still chose to plant something that outlives the storm.